get that started. All right. And the countdown. Sports Bucks with Steve. And this is the retirement wealth coach, Coach Steve. And you know I got to have my theme song playing with me. And I got a special guest. We go back like babies and pacifiers, right? Don't lie. OT, my man, OT Davis, Cowboys checking in. Love.
What's up?
Theme song by your boy Ryan Rystar Young in the background playing. So that's my Sports Bucks.
My man Rye. Oh, we loving that, baby.
Yeah. That's my man Ryan. So y'all don't know, this is the legendary Love background. We're going to be balling. We want to thank Figueroa Partners and everybody else, Ford Insurance Group. Get your nationwide insurance all over the world. Nationwide. This is Cowboys Check-In. Love. Man,
what's up,
here,
baby?
Man.
Cowboy Nation, how you feel?
Cowboy Nation. Y'all, this family, so we're going to have a good time today. So, you know, we like I said, we go way back since we were little kids. And
yeah, baby.
I used to get called Steve Griffin.
Sports
back
Buck.
in the day. So that's Sports Bucks.
My big brother.
Steve. Love. Exactly right, my man.
My big brother, Steve. Thanks, man. Have me on the show.
No doubt about it. Man,
no doubt.
I gotta have you on. Love. So first of all, it's almost like the old hip hop saying, so when did you fall in love with hip hop, right? When did you become a Dallas Cowboy fan?
Oh, man. I became a Cowboy fan, I'm thinking probably third grade. Tony Dorsett, Robert Newhouse, Ed Too Tall Jones, Randy Martin, Roger Staubach, Drew Pearson, Tony Hill, Billy Joe Dupree.
Oh, he done went way back. He went into crates on that one.
Hey, but Hollywood Henderson was my guy.
That's right. Hollywood Henderson and Ed Too Tall Jones and Randy Martin, the Doomsday Defense, right? So
there you go.
We real Cowboy fans. We go back a ways when they were truly America's team. And this is before Emmett and Troy and Michael Irvin, right?
Man,
so
this was the time when I cried because Jackie dropped the touchdown pass against Pittsburgh in the Super Bowl.
That's right.
I cried.
That's right.
You know.
Hey, man, like what's my random song? We cried together. And I cried, right? So I remember that right in his hands.
What's his name? Jackie Harris?
Jackie Slater or something like that.
Jackie
I can't
Slater.
Remember. Something like that. Maybe Jackie Harris or Jackie Slater. He might be right. I can't remember his last name right now. I tried to forget about him.
Well, we were only in grade school. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's a long time, man.
It's a very long time. And I remember I just told my friend Gene, I call him Jersey Gene. I said, I remember I became a fan same time as you, Tony Dorsett. I remember us beating the Broncos 27-10. It was the star on the helmet. And then I remember the next year, the agony of defeat with Jackie dropping that touchdown. And I remember the score, 35-31.
Against
that team.
Against that team.
Right. Right. And it's been a long mutual hatred for that franchise and some level of respect for them because they try to do it the right way with Mike Tomlin being there for a long time. But we got some respect for him. I'm not gonna start talking about the Packers. We'll talk about that another day because of our boy we know who's a big cheesehead fan. But so Love, I want to get into it though as we talk about right. I want to talk about the Dallas Cowboys today and Jerry Jones and his son, as people call him Catboy.
Catboy himself.
So now Love does a really good job of mock drafts, y'all. So he got his drafts. So when we talk about Catboy, one thing I want to say to you, I want to ask you about is, can you explain to me first before I do that? We know that Derek Used Car just got signed. He just got signed. Good signing.
Good signing. Oh, don't want to steer us away from what the subject is, but if I'm the Jets, I go after Lamar Jackson first, then I go after Derek Carr before I even go after Aaron Rodgers, because the reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's going to better places with better talent all the way around, but one Super Bowl. Okay.
That's a good point. And I've had this argument about Green Bay. They've had 2 top 10 all-time quarterbacks, and they got 2 Super Bowls between the 2 of them. That is underachieving in most people's eyes, right? So that's a good point that you make. I think now we know that Derek Used Car, and it's a good sign because he now is the number 1 quarterback in the NFC South because ain't nothing else there, right? So
it wasn't hard to be.
But the Saints, according to Jerry Jones, where he can't figure out how we sign people and all this other stuff, and he don't have the dollars, and I'm gonna go over that in a second. The Saints were $30 to $40 or $50 million over the cap. But they just signed Derek Carr to $35 million a year. So I want to play you something, a video from the snake oil salesman himself, Mr. Jones. And watch what he has to say about this supposed cap. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, here he is. This is from courtesy of Michael Gelkin on Twitter. Listen to this. Let's take it back. Let's hear from Mr. Jones.
We want to get all the help around him, but as we know, when you have a competitive paid quarterback in the NFL, then you're not going to be able to get the most skill around him. You're going to have to pick your spots, and you're going to be a little slower one year than the next year. Not slow in terms of speed, just at what you're doing. You can't pay that position. Get documented. You can't pay that position at that level. Take that much of the available dollars, and then put the exact thing around him. When Dak first got here, we had one of the best offensive lines that, in my mind, that had been put on the field in a long time. And he had that. And so we had skill around him, especially offensively. Well, when you do what you do today and you invest in a quarterback the way you do with these premium quarterbacks, that is diminished. That's automatically has to be diminished. And so when you ask me the supporting cast around him, it'll be hard to get to a supporting cast the way he did when he started his career.
So, in the words of the youngsters today, Mr. Jones, stop the cap. Because for some reason, Jerry believes that people don't do their homework. They don't do their research. For some reason, he thinks it's almost like Love. You remember the Eddie Murphy special, and it was like the who you gonna believe, me or your lying eyes, right? He believes. So he doesn't seem to understand that we watch the Tampa Bay Buccaneers go out and get Jeff and them to win a Super Bowl. We watch the Rams go out and do the same thing the year after that, and we just watched the Philadelphia Eagles go out and do the same thing and just come up short in the Super Bowl. So Tell me, what is Jerry talking about in your understanding?
First of all, I think the game has passed Jerry Wayne Jones by.
Mm,
But let's kind of get into what traditionally the Cowboys do. They love to build through the draft, right?
right.
They love to re-sign their own, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you love building through the draft, you don't get big time free agents, right? But you need this stuff around Dak, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you drafting well?
Mm. Everybody thinks that Dallas they draft well, even though I don't
Well,
think
I
we've missed out on some of the second round and some of the other picks, but we'll see.
I I won't point the finger to certain drafts that we have, but what I will say is that if you know what your personnel should be because you have paid Dak Prescott, why aren't those things being addressed in the draft? Because that's what you traditionally like to do, right?
Right.
So, you know, there's Jerry shooting himself in the foot again, to me. Secondly, right?
And
Oh, go ahead.
mhm.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought because I was going to go over Dak's cap hit by the years, but I want you to finish that. What you're saying?
Okay. And secondly, right, to Jerry's point, when Dak was in a position where he was playing for the rookie contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did they win?
No.
He just said all the pieces were there, though, right?
Right.
So the point I'm making, Jerry, is bigger than what you spend in free agency, is bigger than the draft.
Mm.
You don't have an identity as a football team besides being America's team. And I'm a diehard Cowboy fan. But when I
Mm.
saw Jimmy Johnson, I knew who the Cowboys were. And they played just like who they were.
Yep. They mirrored their coach.
And when I saw the tuna come in, take a way less talented team than any one of the wasted seasons we had with Redhead.
The clapper. Clap on. Clap
Right.
off.
Way less talent, not even the best talented quarterback, and they made the playoffs because the team had an identity. So
Mm.
Jerry, it's not drafting. It's not how much money you spend in free agency. It's getting someone who can create a football team and not allowing your ego to think you can put together a football team because you're a moneymaker.
Mm.
You're not a
That's a great
coach.
point.
You're not a
That's a
GM.
great point.
So when you talk about money and talk about draft picks and free agency in different sentences for
Mm.
me. Because Jerry, you're not that guy to assemble a football team. So it's going to be very, very hard for me to think Steven won't have your same habits and 20 more years go by.
That's a great point because people keep saying, I've heard people say, I can't, for Jerry to retire, but I think Jerry has succeeded some of his responsibilities and duties to Steven. But like you said,
Hmm.
the apple hasn't fallen far from the tree. So Steven, they call him Cap Boy for a reason because apparently he doesn't understand how the cap works and how you can bonus money up front so it doesn't account against the cap if you restructure contracts. So I want to show you something when I'm looking at Dak's contract.
Okay.
2016, he made $500,000 a year. 2017, he made 600,000. 2018, he made 700,000. 2019, he made 2.1. In 2020 is when he got tagged. He made 31.4 million, and in 2022, 17.2 million. And last season, when everybody kept saying that the Cowboys can't get anybody because of Dak Prescott's contract, he made Well, he made $19.7 million. This coming season, he has a $49.1 million hit, which is why they're talking about extending his contract. So, and the one thing, Love, that he did not say also with Dak's 2016, does anybody remember that there was a guy named Tony Romo that was the quarterback of the Cowboys that year? And he got hurt? Anybody remember? Dak was a 4th round draft pick out of Mississippi State who got placed into action because Tony was hurt again.
Oh, wow.
Right? And he took that team as a rookie with Ezekiel Elliott to a 13-3 home field advantage, first divisional bye, and then he faced that bad man from Green Bay because his defense couldn't stop a nosebleed.
Well, let me ask you this. Did that win or loss have anything to do with money at that time, or was
absolutely not?
So Clapboy was the actual coach at that point, right?
Right.
What was his identity?
Mr. Positive. We'll get him next time. No dog.
I don't understand it because your players were in place. What was the identity of the football team?
Right.
Were they prepared? Because if I remember correctly, that was one of Jerry's guys that was head coach at that time, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He was a quarterback for the Cowboys. He was a backup back in the day, and he became, I think, quarterback coach, and eventually they were trying to do the same thing with Kellen Moore.
Correct. I totally agree. But just to kind of compare those two different teams with the same one common denominator, right? Which is
right.
Jerry Wayne Jones. And this was before Steven was even old enough to run the team. He took a coach that he handpicked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Played a playoff game, a home playoff game after an excellent season. And if I'm not mistaken, were they not down about 3 touchdowns before they start coming back?
Yep.
Now, we're going to fast forward to Jerry's other handpicked coach, Mike McCarthy. Last 2 years in a row, have they not looked so unprepared against San Francisco in the playoffs?
2 years in a row.
The only common denominator is Jerry Jones and who he picked to prepare his football team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's preparation, is the, I don't know that I forgot what they say, but preparation is what allows you to handle the task before you, right? But when they played against the 49ers, you bring up a great point. That first year, when they had Amari Cooper, when they had CeeDee Lamb, when they had a healthier Michael Gallup, they had a better version of Zeke.
Tyron
Smith. When they came out that day, I noticed early on, before the game even started, CBS was playing all 49er victories over the Cowboys. I said, okay, this ain't looking good. And the energy that the 49ers came out with the boom box, and they were ready to come out there and we some head busters, right?
Yeah.
They almost like, that's how they were acting, like Killer Mike and them, right? They came out there like that. And I'm like, and when I watched Dallas, flat. They sound like Fergie at the NBA All-Star game. That's how they look coming out. Flat as all day long.
Who was the head coach?
There you go, same guy.
Who picked the head coach?
Jerry Wayne.
Okay.
Sound like a Western, don't it? Jerry Wayne. So Jerry Wayne Jones, I didn't realize his middle name was Wayne, but so I want to play you another video because I want to hear from Dak when they asked him a quick question about his contract and what he had to say about it possibly being extended. Let me see if I can find it. We see Jerry. Here we go. Here's Dak Prescott. Let's see what Dak's got to say.
Okay.
let's take it back. Let me hear you,
The
Dak.
chance you might go back to the table financially. Are you excited about that? To stay here longer than what?
100%. I'm excited. Yeah, to be a Dallas Cowboy, as I said. I mean, always dreamed to be here. Now that I'm here, I don't expect to play for any other team. And now it's just about winning. So just trying to get that done. And just to hear, obviously, as you say in the front office, looking forward to an extension. So when that time comes, it'll happen. Kind of with Steven on it, may just happen overnight, but when it happens, it'll be
back to the table financially. Are you excited?
So as you can hear Dak saying, there's a chance that he might go back to the table financially. They have no choice but to go back and extend Dak Prescott. They have no choice. Dak Prescott, I was looking at some numbers. I sent them to you, and these numbers are sometimes deceiving to me. But when people say, well, Dak has been such a bust. So I was looking at these numbers, and it says Dak Prescott's numbers in 7 seasons. He has 2,185 completions. He's thrown for 24,943 yards, 166 touchdowns, and 65 interceptions.
Wow.
So when you compare that to Drew Brees, to Ben Roethlisberger, and Edward Patrick Brady, his numbers are far better than all of those guys.
By far.
By far. But yet, Cowboy fans want him gone every other weekend. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, Cowboy fans, which I am one, just like you are,
Right.
I have to agree with someone I never thought I would agree with. That guy on ESPN. He's right to a magnitude about delusional Cowboy fans.
Mm-hmm.
He's right. Let's look at our offensive play. Let's look at our defensive play over the past 2 years. Those look like two different teams when it came to situational football.
Mm-hmm.
Our offense was great when it was great. Our defense was consistently good no matter what type of game was being played. They played tough consistently no matter where we were and who we were playing against. I'm saying that to say this. Dan Quinn places an attitude in our defense for those guys to overachieve expectations, whereas our offense beats up on people they should sometime and lose to people that's equally as talented or maybe a little more talented.
That's a great point, because I have been saying this to people in my conversations, and when people say, I watch ESPN and some of these other networks because Mike McCarthy said he wanted to get back to essentially running the football and playing a certain style of football, right? He's trying to get an identity, right? That's what he's telling me. He's trying to find an identity where he said Kellen Moore wants to light up the scoreboard. So the pundits all got on Mike McCarthy. That's the goal, is to score. No, that's not what he's saying. What he was saying was Kellen Moore, if you read between the lines, calls plays on every play he's trying to score a touchdown instead of moving the chains and making the opposition tire themselves out, and you're executing and you're not trying these gadget trick plays and stuff that's going to put you behind the chains. That's what he was saying that Kellen Moore did too often.
I totally agree, because again, situational football, one guy's prepared for that situation, the other guy appears to be guessing. The only problem I have is that same common denominator. Who handpicked Kellen Moore?
That's a great point. And it's very true. I mean, listen, that's where, again, when people look at football and they don't understand the key words you said was situational football. Kellen Moore takes advantage of the talent that the Cowboys have, when it's superior, it can beat up on what? Bad football teams. But when it gets against equal talent or slightly better, he folds like church chairs.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's what you see, because people want to blame Dak Prescott. And the point that I made, I was even telling my guy Jersey Gene, I said the interceptions that Dak had in that 49ers game only led to 6 points.
Yes.
So where was Boy Wonder with his play calling when Tony Pollard went out? It was a wrap, because he couldn't figure out that T.Y. Hilton was open several times in that game, but he was trying. Dak was calling the plays that Kellen Moore was sending in.
Well, let me ask you this right here. We've witnessed about 18 weeks of Dallas Cowboy football, right?
Right.
Where was the halfback screen?
It's nowhere to be found, and that's why our defense struggles so much against it, because they don't see it in practice. We're talking about practice.
I mean, let's take a guy like let's say Javon Curse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did that guy overachieve?
Oh yeah,
based
absolutely.
on where he started over the last 2 years.
Oh yeah.
Based on where he started, right? We'll say he
Yeah.
overachieved up to this point. Am I correct?
Yeah, he was a guy that was a throwing guy that they brought in and wasn't expecting much. And yeah, he absolutely overachieved.
Okay. Now, eliminating injury from Michael Gallup, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had a pretty decent showing of himself, right? For him to be a third round pick, did he accomplish as much as Javon Curse at his position in the scheme he was put in? I don't think we got his full potential, because schematically, guess what? Kellen Moore's not that good.
No, he's not. And all he sends, and this is where you understand Kellen Moore loves curls, and he loves to send Michael Gallup on go routes, and as if he doesn't have any other routes in his route tree that he can run.
Well, again, let's look at the scheme. I see a guy like Javon Curse, who went late in the draft, whose potential up to the point he got to Dallas was special teams play.
Right. And then Javon Curse is one of those guys, like you just talked about. There's a demeanor and there's a mentality that you hope it permeates to the rest of some of those lesser guys, or guys that's even more talented, that you want to see. But you don't necessarily see that as much as you like.
Well, again, why can Dan Quinn do that to a late round draft pick, but Kellen Moore can't do it to a overall third round pick?
Good question, because I didn't see enough want to in some plays with Michael Gallup, and I saw the same thing even with Dalton Schultz. People look at Dalton Schultz, and when I watch, this is where I'm looking at it. And I saw, this is something that's interesting you bring this up, because I'm thinking about Coach Prime got into a little bit of, and if the folks realize we're talking about Coach Deion Sanders, one of the greatest football players that ever lived, top 10, you could probably say all time. Coach Prime got in a little bit of hot water when he made the comment about, and I'm not going to be long on this, but when he made the comment about with his quarterback, he want 3.5 GPA, he want mama daddy together, he wants them tucked up, knit tight. But he said with his D-line, he want him on free lunch. He wants single mama, and they laughed about it. And I thought, okay, Deion, maybe you're not understanding. But then I understood this. What Deion is really saying, and what I want as a Cowboy fan, I want my quarterback, I want my receiver, I want my safety, I want my offensive lineman to have the attitude of my defensive lineman. I want them to have that go get it, hungry man's attitude, mentality, because then it talks about exactly what you just said.
Right. And
Who are you?
it boils down to Dan Quinn has instilled, no matter who comes in on the defensive side of the ball, your attitude must reflect what we are wanting to do as a defensive football team.
That's true.
Unfortunately, we got guys like Noah Brown, who's good for who he is. If we had a better screen play game, maybe Noah Brown would be a little bit better because he's good at blocking, right?
Right. Nobody
I,
talks about that part, though. That's a good point that you bring up. Nobody talks about
I
that.
mean, at the end of the day, I like Ezekiel Elliott,
Mm-hmm. He gives you what you got.
but I also like DeMarcus Ware, and I also like Dez Bryant.
Mm-hmm.
Business has its own relationship, regardless of who you like and who you don't like. So
Mm.
when Jerry Jones talk about money, you got to get rid of Zeke's contract.
If Zeke wants to come back and stay with that team on a veteran minimum,
No,
he's a great
no,
locker room guy. But I know
no.
you feel like he's going to get in the way of Davis's production and
Well,
opportunities.
I really believe that, and so let's look at it this way, right? Let's look at it this way. I think I sent you the mock draft.
Mm-hmm.
They say our offensive line is shaky, right?
Right.
We're picking at 26, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unless a cornerback failed to me,
Like Joey Porter Jr. or one of those
like
guys.
Joey Porter Jr., unless he failed to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
My first pick would be on the offensive side of the ball. But guess who I'm picking? I'm picking Washington tight end from Georgia. And let me explain to you why. One, that gives me an additional pass catcher. 6'7", 270, 4.640.
And did you see him on the sled when all the other tight ends were struggling?
Right. Don't that tell you the other thing that, guess what?
Right.
This guy can block too.
Right.
Our
He's
offensive
athletic.
line our offensive line is weak, right? Who
Fair.
said that we have to draft a wide receiver in the first round to give Dak a weapon?
I don't think you need to do it because you can go get this is where Dallas wants to do it their way. And that's the Jerry Jones. We like our guys. We like our guys. And the reality is you got a DeAndre Hopkins that can be had for a second or third round. You've got an Odell Beckham who is a free agent. You ain't got to give up nobody.
Question about Odell. You'll probably have a little more insight than most people, just knowing your history of sports, right?
Mm-hmm.
Will Odell look like Michael Gallup did coming off the same injury?
Well, I think that at this point he might look better because he's just his that cone game, that short cone stuff. That's where Odell Beckham is special.
Yes.
Right. And so he's had more than a year plus now to recover from that injury where Michael Gallup was kind of rushed back into action because they gave him the contract. Jerry gave him the money.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It must be the money, like Prime says, that's got to get him back on that field. So I think that with Odell Beckham, you remember he got hurt in the Super Bowl with the Rams. Right. So we didn't have a Super Bowl that's didn't pass by.
Okay.
You got all off season. You got the summer. By the time the football season starts back, we're going on a year and a half since he's had that injury.
Nice. Never saw it that way. Makes a lot of sense to me. So, having said that, right, you get to 26. You don't really care much about the guards that's left.
Mm-hmm.
You could pick up a really good corner second day. You don't really have a number one to me, you don't really have a number one wide receiver that's going to make a difference.
And that point in the draft, I don't see it either. I like the kid they talk about from Ohio State. I always forget his name, Ngagbe or whatever his name is, the young
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
I like him, but that's the problem with Dallas. Yeah, you like these young guys and you want to draft them, but here's another thing why I want an Odell Beckham type. By the way, Bobby Wagner is sitting around the house right now also, and they're going to try to spend their money on LVE. Bobby Wagner is this is what I want Dallas to get a little bit more of. The mentality that you just talked about with Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn is what? He's won a Super Bowl as a coordinator, right? We know Mike McCarthy's won a Super Bowl as a coordinator, as a coach. Dan Quinn is a guy, when we look at the players that we could bring around, a guy like Bobby Wagner, Dallas is lacking. They've never really had, with the exception of maybe Jason Peters, but he's 41 or whatever he is this time. Dallas has never gone out and said, let me go get a Super Bowl winning player.
Yes.
Who's been a star and still can play, bring him into my locker room to change the culture.
Agree.
They never want to do that because it's all about Jerry Jones. We like our guys mentality.
So, just based on what you're saying, right? If you sign Odell Beckham, Super Bowl winner, and let's just say you get the young tight end out of Georgia.
Love it.
You have created a whole different offensive image.
Yep. You got athletes all over the place.
You get a guy that's 270 that runs a 4.6 40. Who's going to check him? A linebacker, a safety? And now I
don't think people realize what you just said, because I don't think they understand that this guy is 6'7" and he's 260 something pounds, and he ran a 4.6 or 270, running a 4.6 40.
A low 4.6 40.
If you think about what that equivalent would be for a guy his size who's small, I mean, you think that's a 4.3 guy in a smaller body, if you would think of it that way, but his size.
It's also an offensive lineman.
Yeah, at that side, that's another blocker. Which when I saw him on that sled, and how easy he just pushed it to the side, he just pushed it forward.
Yes,
he understood. You know what I also saw? He understands balance. He was low.
He came from Georgia. SEC product.
Right.
By the way, don't get me started on Cowboys don't draft enough SEC talent.
They don't.
I know they.
And every time they do it, they hit when they just do that.
With the exception of our LSU cornerback that I won't say his name, but I feel bad for him. I know they like their guys, they Texas guys, and I know they like signing their own. LVE, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's good in Dallas, but he's not good anywhere else. He don't change the game.
You know what's funny? You make that comparison. I make an analogy because I've heard people say this. Now, we're not talking basketball right now, but somebody said the same thing about Draymond Green. They said Draymond Green is good in Golden State, but if you put him somewhere else, would he be the same player? I don't know, but it kind of makes sense when I think about LVE. He's good in Dallas, but you put LV somewhere else, do you even hear his name again?
Well, I don't think you do, but to Draymond's credit, you could take Draymond's attitude, his effort, and you could put him in the Lakers. You could take him and put him with the 76ers, with Boston, with the Dallas Mavericks, with the Miami Heat. And those guys are legitimate contenders. Because, see, Draymond is a leader of men.
Yeah.
When we get to Draymond, it's not about what he brings to the table from a talent standpoint. You could take a guy like Draymond and put him with Minnesota, and Minnesota's a whole different football team. I mean, basketball team.
No,
Sorry.
I got it, but they come with a football mentality though.
Right.
So so I get, you know what? I think if you put him on Memphis and he gives them a grown up in the room. Now we're not talking about
the Clippers.
Yeah.
So I think Draymond is
Phoenix.
especially Phoenix.
Right.
Now you put him in Phoenix, KD is no longer soft.
Did you see what happened? This man hurt his ankle on a layup line. He's out 2 weeks. He's out 2 weeks on a wet floor. You just can't make this up. I mean, I could not believe when I saw the video. I didn't want to laugh at him because I hate to see the brother in any type of pain like that. But really, KD, I mean, how? Listen, we're going to talk all day. We're going to have to get ready to get out of here. But I want to talk real quickly as we shift gears a little bit about Lamar, what me and Ryan calls him the great freak show Jackson. And I want to get your last thoughts on this before we get out of here, because we going good on this one today, boys. So, but Lamar, what are your thoughts on Lamar Jackson? And there's a video that I have with Chris Canty, who's very frustrated. Former, I think he played for the Giants. I think he played for Cowboys at one point. Chris Canty is frustrated. You know what? He played for the Cowboys, and I think he won a Super Bowl. That's right. Let's hear from. Let me see if I have this video. If I'm not gonna, if it does something crazy, because sometimes he was very frustrated. And I'm gonna play this, and I want to get your final thoughts on Lamar Jackson.
I know this is important to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm extremely sensitive to it, as well as all the current and former players, just because we all understand how hard it is to get to the point where Lamar Jackson is now, where you have the chance to leverage your talents and get true market value. Players don't get leverage very often in the National Football League, but the adage goes, when you get the hammer, you better swing it. Unfortunately for Lamar, the owners ain't gonna let him swing the hammer. That's what this comes down to. You brought up the Colin Kaepernick situation and how they handled that. But we found out that the NFL was on the wrong side of it, because Roger Goodell in that promotional video or commercial he came out with and said they were wrong in how they treated Colin Kaepernick. Well, the NFL is dead wrong with what they're doing with Lamar Jackson now, because there is no other plausible explanation why a 26-year-old MVP quarterback that's won a road playoff game and is fourth in wins since he's come into the league, who's had his team in the playoffs 4 of the 5 seasons he's been a starter, can't get the guarantees that Deshaun Watson got in his contract. There is no explanation for it other than collusion. There is no plausible explanation.
There are other explanations. I agree with you. Here's the thing. I agree with you, but there's no plausible explanation
when you start to see the reaction of all the other teams within hours of the Ravens making the announcement that they're going to tag.
Well, because reporters are reaching out to teams, like trying to gauge their interest, and they're being told. But here's the counter. I agree with you, Chris Canty, but here's what other teams will say and execs will say. They will point to, here's a guy who's 1-3 in the playoffs. Here's a guy who, when you look at his skill set, the thing that the knock on him has always been him as a pure passer. That is what they point to. When you look at Deshaun Watson, teams out there feel like Deshaun Watson is a better football player. Forget all the other stuff that's going on with Deshaun Watson, but they feel like Deshaun Watson is a better football player. So Chris, I agree with you, but I'm telling you, there are arguments within front offices about players and talent and all that stuff.
Okay.
So, Love, as we get ready to take this thing on home with the mothership, listen, what's your thoughts about the Lamar Jackson situation and the fact that the Panthers, we're talking about the Panthers, who is going to put out whatever they call a quarterback right now. We're talking about the Falcons down in ATL where you reside, right? Said they out on Lamar Jackson, who has the kid from Cincinnati is the quarterback right now. It's going to be in his second season. So, and I know there was another team that was out on Lamar. What is this about? What's really going on?
Well,
because it sounds like collusion to me.
For me, I have to use that phrase that, you know, they say lightning never strikes twice in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
I have to look at it that way, because for one, we already know those billionaires do not want guaranteed money in football.
Mm-hmm.
So we witness history with Deshaun doing his
Watson.
thing,
Right.
Watson, right?
Right.
Do you remember the uproar the rest of the owners made for that situation?
Mm-hmm.
Do you not think Baltimore people got in contact with every other owner, said, hey, we're going to take this approach right here? What was that movie, Band of Brothers?
Mm-hmm.
So although those other teams know what this guy's market value is, right?
Mm-hmm.
You will never ever see them give money away guaranteed fully in the NFL.
Mm.
I won't say it's a black thing or a white thing. And the reason I won't say it is because only a brother has ever done it before.
Right.
So there's not a prejudice.
Mm-mm.
It's the fact that I'm a billionaire and I'll make you a millionaire on my terms.
Mm.
That's the way I see that. So unfortunately, and I'll be very surprised. And again, when we look at the business of football, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Durant, you said, just gave an example a few minutes ago, got hurt in the layup line, right?
Right.
If Lamar Jackson got hurt in the layup line, but he has guaranteed money, right? How does that work for the business of football?
And that's a great analogy. In the business of football, what we know is this. We know that the Ravens have said, you can date somebody else. Let's see if the grass is greener when you go over there, because I'm gonna put a little bit of salt in the game, though. I'm gonna over salt them greens, right? I'm gonna put too much in it. So when the other team is like, well, wait a minute, we get two. If they reserve the right to match whatever offer you get, but in case we don't want to match it, we're gonna get 2 first-round picks for you for all the trouble. Now, I'll say this. Could that mean that the other teams are like, man, we know they're going to match us, so why are we even going to do it? Could that be in play?
Possibly.
Right? Because we know this is not, like you said, this is not a black or white thing here. This is a right and wrong thing. But really what it is a business thing.
Business.
Right? This is business, right? This is a billionaire
business
playing chess while Lamar was playing checkers. Right. And so do they not like the fact that Lamar doesn't have an agent? Because that money don't get to go back in certain circles by him doing that. Right. Remember, his mom represents him.
Mm-hmm.
So I know Lamar. I've seen Lamar play when he was a little boy, by the way. He was a teenager playing out in Deerfield. We saw him in an SFYFL youth football Super Bowl championships. That day was shared by, it was all kind of talent on that field that day. It was Dalvin Cook was playing. It was Mark Walker.
Wow.
Throughout the day, it was crazy. So big business, love. We definitely got to do this multiple times. As if I could have you on, because
it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, brother.
You know, this has been really, really fun, and so every superhero y'all know needs his own theme song. So, hey. Get the money. We want to thank Figwell Partners. Hey, Love, what is your company's name again, man? Let's shout them out real quick.
Oh, man. Grill Effect Barbecue. We always here. Cut Your Cable Cost TV. We'll always be here. Look us up.
And say that again for the people in the back, just in case they didn't hear you.
Okay, for those in the back, Grill Effect Barbecue. Link, Grill Effect BBQ, gmail.com. You could always reach us at 800-522-5554. Thank you. And Big Bruh, it was my pleasure being on your show tonight, man. I knew you would do great things. I appreciate you for letting me ride the coattail like you always did. And Cowboy Nation, let's rise up, but we got to get rid of this Jerry Wayne delusional Jones.
Sports Bucks. We'll see y'all next week. We got to bring Love back. He a regular now. We'll see you.